part of the reason we've created Shamory, the products as a whole, and the way we have is because we wanted to bring a sense of kind of realness to what, as you know, is a very heavily digital space.
One of soccer's legendary players, Johan Cruyff, said this about the game. He said, "Playing football is very simple, but playing simple football is the hardest thing there is." And when I take that quote and relate it to Bitcoin, this is how it comes out. Understanding Bitcoin is very simple, but simply explaining Bitcoin is the hardest thing there is. And this relates to this episode's guest because Scott from Shamory is doing just that. He's taking the simple idea of Bitcoin and he's found a way to simply explain it to the masses, which I think is a lot more complex than maybe it sounds. So in this episode, we dive into Scott's company, Shamory, and talk about why he founded it, where it is today, and where it's going in the future. Scott's company is also a family company, which I think is really cool to see, especially in the Bitcoin space. Scott, along with his wife and young daughter, are on the forefront of creating great educational materials to make Bitcoin simple and digestible for mass adoption. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. Scott, welcome to More Than Blockchain. How are you?
Happy to be here. I'm doing great.
Thanks for hopping on. As we were saying off mic or before we started recording, we've been playing, what's the new thing for tennis? It's not tennis. It's, what's that new sport?
Pickleball.
Pickleball. We've been playing pickleball back and forth, trying to find a time that's going to work for both of us. So thank you for hopping on. Where are you calling from? Where are you out of?
We're based out of San Diego, California. So nice sunny day in our neck of the woods.
You love to see it. You love to see it. So today we're here to talk about something that I'm actually very excited about because I think that this is still a huge part of the space and it speaks to how nascent the space is, and that is education. And I was reading a little bit on your website, but maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your company and why you founded it. And yeah.
So the company is Shamory, and it was founded by my wife and I, and we also have a 4-year-old daughter who actually just turned 4 a couple of days ago. And I bring that point up because, the life cycle of Charlotte, our daughter, kind of coincides with the company itself. So it was created with her in mind as we started becoming more interested in Bitcoin in 2017, 2018, beginning to plan our family and what that would look like. We both recognized, there wasn't really much of anything out there for in particularly young kids and families to be able to start learning about this sort of thing. And so we figured, it could be a fun side project for us to dive down together as we start having a family of our own. And so that was the why behind it all. And then since that time, April of 2020 was the launch of our first product. And kind of since that time, been able to keep building and growing alongside of our daughter, who's now present in the space and helping us be able to keep going.
April in 2020, you launch, and that is quite a time to launch a business. When you look back, in 10 years, you're like, wow, you launched in April 2020. But in some sense, it was almost the perfect time to launch an e-commerce based business, right? So what were you and your wife doing before, and how was that transition? Because the story in my head is you had the idea in 2019, you guys were doing your own thing, maybe something different, maybe together, maybe a different business or enterprise. But then when you dove in, you kind of dove in maybe all the way, or were you still keeping stuff kind of going? I feel like you dove in all the way. And if you did, was it almost a perfect moment to kind of jump into something that you can do from your home?
Yeah, so it definitely was an odd but perfect time to launch, like you said. And so when I say launch, that's when the website went live and we started taking orders. So we'd been planning things out. It took about a year to actually create the game, go through the mechanics of it, graphics, manufacturing, everything between, nothing we'd ever done before. And so being able to launch, right when the world turned upside down really did kind of helped us get to where we are today, in the sense that, we were all forced to be in our house. We had at that time almost a 1-year-old. And so we were balancing, my wife had her full-time job. I had my full-time job. We were launching this side project, and we had almost 1-year-old to be able to take care of. And, it kind of all just kind of worked synergist and working out that way. And both of us, prior to this, my wife still has her full time job. So she works in call it the counseling space. She helps disabled teenagers as they're thinking to what's next post high school. So whether that's jobs or certifications or degrees, so she helps in that transition is her job. And prior to Shamory, I was at a ed tech startup here for 13 years. So neither of us are teachers by trade. We do have lots of teachers in our family as well, but we both had kind of the education background to be able to understand that. And as we thought about our future family, we were both passionate about kind of the homeschooling side of things, which then also kind of plays into everything that's happened for many people around the world since that time. And transitioning from public schools into maybe bringing things home and keeping that more close knit.
Yeah, all that makes sense. And when I was reading about your story about you, Mallory and Charlotte, I was like, whoa, this is crazy because Charlotte's gonna grow up in a world similar to the world that you and I probably grew up in, where it was like, oh yeah, the internet is a thing. Maybe when we started out with the internet, it was AIM or email or maybe MySpace, but we were always kind of internet native. And now she's growing up in a world where she's going to be Bitcoin native. And I want to know, when you and Mallory got into Bitcoin, how long ago was that, before 2019? Or was it in 2019 you got into it and you were like, whoa, there's no kids' books. There's no like education for all ages.
Yeah. So it was my interest began kind of in that 2017, 2018 bull run. So really kind of the end of it. So say December 2017. So, at the time we had been married for a year or so. And Mallory was supportive of my interest and whatever financial obligations we went that direction. But she wasn't interested personally. And if she was here, she would tell you, it wasn't until we started creating this together that her interest peaked, and being able to, in particular for her, go out and meet people in person, whether it's at, small meetups or be at conferences, hear directly from, the families that are using our products. That's really what drives both of our passions, but in particular hers, that really got interested. And so it's been a fun journey to go down together.
Yeah, it looks crazy. And actually, I want to talk about now something. So on the website, and at the end, I'll let you shout out where people can get in touch. But the website's really easy to find because it's just shamory.com. And when you're on there, there's this really cool thing. There's, under the videos tab, there's how to play Shamory. And I watched that twice and I was blown away. And so my question is, from your start in 2019, when you started with the idea, when you sat down on the kitchen table and say, hey, honey, what about this idea, to where it is today? I mean, in my head, it's like 50 different iterations to get that thing perfect, just the way that it all really works seamlessly. And I will definitely buy a Shamory set, I promise, because I want to play it. And I think it will allow me also to understand Bitcoin is a little bit on a deeper level. So how many iterations are we talking? I mean, I don't know if you wrote them down, but what do you think?
Yeah, I would probably say somewhere between 10 and 15 when it's all told together. And really the biggest iteration aha that we had was at the beginning. So for people that don't know, everything that we've created since that time is using these Bitcoin monster characters throughout. They're in the game and then they're throughout everything we do. But prior to that, the game itself was played. It's played similar to the game Memory, so a lot of it has to do with similar to memory games. And on the actual cards being used that you're supposed to memorize was way too much detail. So we were trying to actually put down, details of blocks and height and that sort of thing. As we played it with the people we tested out with, our core family members, one, it wasn't fun, and two, it was just way too hard. Like our brains, a normal person's brain doesn't really work like that, where you're looking at so much detail to then be able to memorize. So the biggest aha was really that image-based visualization that we brought to life through the cards, through the monsters. That was the biggest twist. But yeah, there's probably 10 to 15. A lot of them, were just literally me doing, shitty graphics on Word documents or whatever, and then, cutting them out, cardboard, paper, or whatever, just to pretend like you're playing. And then we probably had a few, two or three that were actually printed prior to the current one that's done in mass production.
That's super cool, because I'm looking at that thing and I'm like, yeah, it looks very simple. And I'm wondering, what is like the amount of information one needs to play? I'm assuming it's zero, but it's kind of like card games, right? If you think about playing Texas Hold'em, You need
Yeah.
a really certain level of information and understanding to be able to engage with that. However, Uno, you can learn in under 3 seconds. Now, if those are the two things where we have Texas Hold'em on one side and Uno on the other, I'm assuming it's really close to Uno. But is there a demographic that this is kind of ideal for?
That's a great analogy. And so from an age based, we kind of like saying age 4 on up through adults. We do have drinking game instructions that are on the website. So, it can be that. But age range around 4, and it is closer to the Uno. So first off, you need to know zero about Bitcoin going into this. And what we'd like to say is if you and your children can play memory, like literally just the game of memory, then you can play this game. The only twist is, as you saw from watching the video, is there's pieces around, you're building a blockchain, you're mining a blockchain, you're earning rewards. There's a difficulty adjustment that can happen. You're rolling a dice. So you need to, in particular, watch the video, do that once or twice. It's a couple of minutes long, and you'll be able to get it, like that. And once you have that down, then you're good to go. So it can sound more complicated than it actually is, but really at the heart of it, it's just a memory game.
And then how long does it take it to play? And the reason why I ask this is because my entire life, and I have no idea how old you are, but I will age myself here. I'm 36. In my entire life, everything like sports to card games, everything just becomes shorter, right?
Yeah.
We now have TikToks, right? We had Vines for a while, which were only 6-second clips. We even have changed the rules of America's pastimes. That way it goes quicker because people are just like, we're not going to we're not going to go watch the Red Sox play San Diego and sit there for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. So what is the average time that the game lasts, do you think, or do you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. And actually, that's one of the nice things. So part of the game that's determined prior to even you start playing is the concept of a difficulty adjustment. And so you can make that harder or easier depending on particular, are you playing with a young child or is it a bunch of adults together? So that's one factor. So if you're playing with, let's say you're using 0 difficulty adjustments and you're adults, you can play it in a couple of minutes, as long as you have an adequate memory there. But if you start playing it, we like saying 3 is a good starting point for in there. And, then you're talking maybe 10 or so minutes, for that normal game, 10, 15 minutes to go through, which is nice. So families can sit down, they can play a couple games, maybe after dinner or that sort of thing, or before dinner, or just to quickly pass the time. But that kind of 10, 15 minute is kind of a sweet spot that we hear back.
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes is actually, it's ironic. I was looking the other day at like the optimal YouTube time. And if you're trying to monetize, and I think it's around 12 minutes. So 10 to 15 is just perfect. And I say YouTube as an optimal time to give us an idea because YouTube is 35% of the storage on the internet. Like it is the second biggest other than Google search engine. So it really is a place that kind of gives you an idea of the meta conscience of the internet and their, maybe attention span. So that 10 to 15 makes sense. Let's talk about some of the other things because you also have books, which I find fascinating. And I will be off mic. We'll be talking about that because I have I have too many friends with too many little kids, and I know that Goodnight Bitcoin, obviously a play of Goodnight Moon, and then if you give, it's not if you give a mouse a cookie, I believe it's if you give a monster a Bitcoin, right? So talk to me about the development of that, and if you could, I would love to know which one sells more out of those 2 books.
So great question. Those were our 2 books, and kind of playing off of the Charlotte angle. So we had made the card game, obviously, April of 2020. She was definitely too young to play then, being just 1. But the fact that you avid readers to her at that time, we realized, okay, let's create something next that's going to really fit where she's at, because we know there's so many other parents out there. So that's where the ideas of the book came through. And one thing people that are parents that read to their children will know is you definitely want books that you're going to enjoy too. There's lots of really bad kids books out there. And so, we've read plenty of like you mentioned, Goodnight Moon, Goodnight Baseball, Goodnight Gorilla. So we kind of went down that angle with Goodnight Bitcoin. So that was the first one, which would have been in August of 2021. So a little over a year after the book came out is when that launched. And that book in particular tells the story of Satoshi and Hal. So they're the 2 monster characters that we've named thus far. And they go through the process of creating Bitcoin together with their friends, hearing how people think they can't do it, and then ultimately succeeding. So it's kind of the story of the creation of Bitcoin. And then the follow-up to that, which is If You Give a Monster a Bitcoin, which came out last September. So like September 2022. is If You Give a Monster a Bitcoin. And that really tells the story of the different layers of good that Bitcoin could potentially do in the world as it spreads around. So they're a nice 1-2 punch. To your question, we've sold more of Goodnight Bitcoin only because it kind of had that year head start. It sounds like a cop-out answer, but for example, like when we were in Miami last month, it's about 50-50 between people grabbing one or the other. Obviously, there's a lot of people who then are coming because they have one of them. They have Goodnight Bitcoin maybe from the year prior, so they're getting the new one. So it's always good to kind of have that fresh lineup out there for people to grab things. And the books are definitely a popular one.
So 2021, we have Goodnight Bitcoin. 2022, we have If You Give a Monster a Bitcoin. These are just awesome names. 2023, not to put any pressure on you, but you're coming up on the year since you launched the last one, which was in September of 2022. Yeah. Are you gonna, is the idea to continue to drop books as though they were like albums, or is there gonna be, like what's the future development look like?
I like that analogy. And so there's definitely other book ideas that we have in our head and products in general. Right now, our main focus over the start of 2023 has been our what we call our Shamory, which is our plush toy that we launched with the Bit with Bitcoin Foundation. And so that's our biggest focus right now. And then, like with everything else in life, it's a resource constraint. So we've literally run this company like everything that comes in is just going into creating the next project that's out there. And so as those things pick up, as the Bitcoin market picks up, we typically see kind of those more sales are trickling in. It's really funny, when you're not paying for marketing, and your biggest way to get it is through Twitter and these sorts of conversations. Our website organic traffic, literally, you could probably map it with the Bitcoin price over the past few years. Like that's just how it works. And I've talked to other people in this space. I'm sure you would podcast downloads. It's the same thing. So, as that starts picking up, I'm sure everything will heat up, and that'll let us keep dropping those those books like albums and everything else.
Yeah, for sure. I was on a call this morning with a UK group that does, let me see if I can get this right, crypto, gaming, and skateboarding. That's kind of like their thing. They've launched 2 NFTs. They've sold out. They're doing pretty well there. And we were having that conversation this morning that we're like in a survive to thrive moment, because we just need to survive now, knowing that when the price goes up, when the market rebounds, when the printing happens, like whatever it needs to happen to push the market back up, then all of a sudden, as you said, More Than Blockchain will be a little bit hotter, right?
Yes.
Shamory will be a little bit hotter, and so on and so forth. And that brings me to my curiosity. And I know that you went to Bitcoin Miami this year. I was supposed to go. I wasn't able to go. And it's tough to see Twitter when you're not at one of these events because the FOMO is kind of real. But did you notice a difference between 2021, 2022, and 2023, not only in sales, but maybe just in overall energy?
So energy-wise, no. The energy was there both years. So we've been going for the past 3 years. So 2021 was our first year. We had no idea what to expect. At that time we just had our card game. So we rolled up. We didn't even have an official spot to set up. We had made friends with Des, who's now at Thunder Games. Prior to that, she was at Mint Gox, and they had a gaming area. And she was kind enough to say, hey, if you want to set up on literally a 4-foot by 2-foot table inside our arena, you're welcome to. So we sat up there, and for, I think that one was only 2 days long, and just nonstop, just talking and talking and talking. We're like, okay, there's something here. And so that was kind of the biggest energy aha. And so then last year, obviously population wise, or attendee wise, I should say, was the biggest one yet. And we were in the Bitcoin Bazaar area, same sort of thing. You're just nonstop talking all day, people coming over, chatting, and just kind of fun going on everywhere. And then this year, even though it was, say half the size, the energy was still there, especially where they placed the bazaar. Once again, was kind of right next to the main stage and their official booth. So it was in an area that had a lot of population traffic walking by. We had a nice spot on the corner, main spot, next to Crypto Cloaks and Bitcoin for Panties, who are both awesome groups that are out there, and we love being close by with them. And so even though it was a smaller group, the energy was there, the focus was there. And this was the first year that we actually brought Charlotte along with us. So that, made for a whole new dynamic. We had no idea she's very much a mature for her age. But when you put a then 3-year-old in that sort of setting and 3 days of being at a booth for 10 hours, you have no idea what to expect. But she was a rock star. She was selling bracelets for donation, and did quite well herself. And so it was a completely new experience this year that we plan. I think she would definitely be very hurt if she's not at every future conference we go to.
I definitely think she'll be. She's a part of the team, so she should be there. And I haven't looked on the website, but this just occurred to me, and this is more of like a behind the scenes question, and I'm hoping you'll indulge me. First question is, do you accept Bitcoin for the books and for the games?
Yeah, so Bitcoin or credit cards, whatever you want.
Bitcoin or credit cards. Okay. My question is now, and this is more of a business question and where I hope that you'll indulge me.
Yeah.
Do any of your vendors, the people that are going to put the book together, the people that are going to do all that work, who put the card games together, do they accept Bitcoin?
They do not. So none of that. The only one that does, so one of the products we resell is called Sats Ledger. It's by a gentleman, MTC BTC on Twitter. And so he's out of the UK. And so for the past couple of years, we've just had a really simple wholesale arrangement where, they'll give me the wholesale price. I'll sell it. It makes it easier for the States for people to grab it. So with him, those are Bitcoin transactions. But with everything else, these are larger manufacturers that they're on the traditional side of things.
Yeah, that was just one of the curiosities that I have because, as this grows and in 2025, a year out from the halving, which is happening now, less than a year till 2024 halving, the story in my head is that there's going to be a lot of people who have business models where it's just going to get kind of funky really quick, where they're going to start, maybe right now you're making 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% in Bitcoin. Maybe that's how people are paying. But the story in my head, especially now with Lightning being so kind of everywhere, that, some business models, maybe you're going to have 50% in Bitcoin, which isn't going to be a bad thing as the price appreciates, but it's also like, I think maybe trying to balance the books would be a little bit weird if you were getting 50 to 60% in Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a dilemma because on the Bitcoin side of things, we've always tried to just hold the Bitcoin and use the fiat to be able to pay for the expenses. That's just been the motto. And we've been able to successfully do that sort of thing. But over the past, in particular year, I would say, there's been a much larger shift in Bitcoin payments, either through the website or on person. I would say we're talking about on person in 2021. It was probably about, I would say 30% of the sales, like at Bitcoin Miami, would be Bitcoin transactions, and the other 70% fiat. And we need to expect this going in. I don't know why not, but a large percentage of cash transactions. Yeah, like I said, we rolled up there. We probably had like $30 in bills to be able to give people change with. So we had to quickly think on our feet there. So we learned that dynamic going into the past couple of years. But then over the past year, so going back to Miami last year and then a couple of weeks ago, or I guess a month ago now, I would say it's about 50-50 Bitcoin to fiat. And, it's awesome to see. Most of that's in Lightning in person. We probably had 3 on-chain transactions this year in Miami, and then the rest just people doing Lightning, which is cool. But like you said, it is from a business standpoint, a dilemma in the sense that, okay, you don't want to sell it, especially now, because you know where it's all going, but you got to pay, it's not cheap for, a family of 3 to get to Miami and pay for a booth and send all this inventory. And so you got to figure it out somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad and thank you for, speaking to that, because I do think that that's something that is going to become an issue. I was talking with someone the other day and that kind of came up. The whole idea, well, if we can't pay our vendors with this thing that we're getting paid for, it gets kind of funky quick. Even if the price were to be appreciating, it's kind of like, how do we balance the books? Like the small business, the behind the scenes of the economics, I think gets kind of funky. And so I wanted to touch upon that. Moving forward, are you going to get into any kind of digital products?
We've already, in particular, the game, people have always asked, can you turn it into an app or things like that, which you definitely can. But part of the reason we've created Shamory, the products as a whole, and the way we have is because we wanted to bring a sense of kind of realness to what, as you know, is a very heavily digital space, especially as you think about, our focus is families and family time. And so giving people another way to, sit behind a screen wasn't our first choice. And so that's why we've kind of gone physical to begin with. Obviously, that also comes up with dilemmas around shipping and storage. we don't have a large place here in San Diego. It's not the cheapest place in the world to live. So definitely having to figure out, where do all these things go is a problem. So there's that side of things. We do on the kind of the bigger bang side of things for Shamory, we envision the monsters in particular as a very, very strong part of our brand, and having those come to life in things like video games or television shows or movies, are ways that we can, co-brand with other groups that are out there. And we've had, beginning discussions with certain people around some of that. And hopefully, as the bull market continues to pick up, I think those conversations will probably be easier to have. Over the past 2 years, it's been a lot of things have disappeared on those conversations because those people are probably not there anymore, or just they don't have the resources. So on the digital side, it's more apt, like we see these characters being digitized in a lot of different ways to be able to come to life and help teach people. Our daughter knows who Satoshi is because of, I know people can't watch him, but because of this, like because of the characters in the books. She knows what the Bitcoin symbol looks like because of a visual look to everything. And so those little things, as she and all these other kids grow up, that's the sense of comfort that they're going to have, to your point earlier, like they're just growing up with it. And so it's not going to be something weird. And if our small role in that is them saying, oh, I remember when I was a kid, I used to sleep with a plush toy named Satoshi, then that's all like that, then we've done it.
That's just absolutely crazy. People can't see me either. But my response to that of like, yeah, I grew up with my little stuffed animal name, I call him Sats, right? Like, where's Sats? That's wow. That's the world we're living in. And it's awesome. Because when I saw the characters, the first thing that came to my mind in the world we live now with BRC20 and ordinals was like, oh, that's got to be an ordinal project, right? Like that's got to be totally snapped up by somebody and, a collaboration done between, Shamory and someone else. So is that kind of along the lines as far as...
Yeah, who knows? Like, I don't even know where it would go, but yeah, that sort of thinking, whether it's just digitized pictures or, in our minds, we really want to just kind of let these things live however they will benefit the people the most. And, we're always open to having those conversations with people. So, if people are out there listening and they just want to chat about ideas, my DMs are open, Shamory's DMs are open, emails are always out there. So we're pretty easy to get a hold of.
And now I'd love to give you that chance to shout out where people can find you. I've already shouted out the website a little bit, but please go ahead and share that. And also, Shamory's probably, Shamory's Twitter, and then your own personal Twitter or just wherever the DMs are open.
Totally. And actually, before that, I mentioned it a few times. So the latest project that we have is the Chamois, which is our plush toy that looks like it's Satoshi. And then the front of it, if people can go to the website and see it, has the continent of Africa on there. And so for that particular project, we've partnered with the Built with Bitcoin Foundation, who we've worked with for a few years now, but this is our biggest collaboration yet, where we're attempting to fund an entire water well in Africa. And so for each of these plush toys that gets purchased, 21% of the gross sale is getting donated directly to the Built with Bitcoin Foundation, with a goal of raising $7,000, which would give us enough to build that well down there. And so we're about 40% of the way there. I think about $3,000 has been raised over the first 2 months or so, which is awesome. And so if people are interested in that, hit the website, check it out. People can buy the toy for themselves, or if you don't have children, or if you're a company in the space, you can also just gift the plush toy to a child down there, and we'll handle all of that. So we have a gifting option, whether you can do one or batches of 30, and we'll deliver them down there to the kids, which is awesome to see. And one of the, Yusuf from the Built with Bitcoin Foundation is an awesome guy. And the coolest things he told us, he delivered the first ones about a month ago, right before the conference. And for many of these kids, it's literally the first time they've ever had a plush toy of any kind. And so seeing them smile and get so excited is cool. So there is that side of it. And then, but yeah, our website is shamory.com, SHAMORY. And you'll find all our information there. We do ship worldwide. Obviously, the international shipping can be pricey. Nothing much we can do about that. There are a few resellers around particularly in the UK and Canada, that you may be able to find our stuff at. Play Shamory is our handle across social channels, Twitter, Facebook. Don't think you want me to read an NPub from Nostr, so we are on Nostr there. Feel free to track us down. And then myself, I'm Scott M. Sibley on Twitter. And, for those that, or email is just scott@shamory.com.
Excellent. I will throw all those links in the show notes. And Scott, this has been a pleasure. I really, this is one of those things that I couldn't have foreseen come out of Bitcoin, but I'm really glad that it has. And I think it's going to continue to grow and really spark, it really hits a nerve with people, because education and making sure that the younger generation or any generation is kind of on board. And I think all your products allow more people to come around the table that maybe couldn't before because Bitcoin can seem intimidating to people. So thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me on. It was great to be here. And thanks for hearing the story, everyone.
Thanks for checking out this episode of More Than Blockchain. And to get in touch with Scott, go ahead and check out the episode show notes. As always, please follow us on social media at More Than Blockchain. And if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and share it with a friend. Especially if you have young kids or know someone that has young kids. These two books are wonderful ways to be able to introduce the idea of Bitcoin to the next generation. No matter where you're listening to the pod, please go ahead and subscribe. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of More Than Blockchain, and I'll see you next time.